Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Well, hello, amigo. How are you'ns?
Man, I'm so excited to be back with you. It feels like a while since we got to do this together, but I'm excited to be here today because, man, we're kicking an old school. Oh, hey, Bruce, time out. Before we get going, you told me when we clicked record, you needed to give a special shout out. What's up with that?
Well, yeah, because Pat McAfee was giving me crap just yesterday because says, hey, man, I got up and there was no Something to Wrestle with. I said, well, that's on me. But then he went on to tell me that his entire system crashed right 15 minutes before he went on the air. He says, so what happened to you? And I said, my system crashed 15 minutes before we were to go on the air. And so, yeah, hey, Pat, I hope you enjoy this show, and shout out to you. And for those of you that love Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, Conrad Thompson, check out Pat McAfee's show as well, man. He's my pal. He's good dude. He's good people. He even likes Conrad.
And a few weeks ago, he was actually telling the story that you've told us here on the show before about what an Oklahoma Sooner really is.
That's because I told him.
That's what I'm saying. He acknowledged that you told him that.
Yeah. Because Sooner equals cheater.
Oh, will you stop?
Well, it does.
You're just too much.
You're too much.
Well, shout out to Pat. And I'm glad you were there to help my friend when he fell ass over tea kettle down the Madison Square Garden steps, story by story, deck by deck, row by row. And then there he was to pick you up and dust you off.
And then I showed him my leg and blinded him with its just sheer paleness.
You're taking that whole white suit gimmick too far. Like you're Casper the Friendly Bruce.
That's me.
We're throwing out our typical format and instead doing what we did once upon a time for Houston wrestling. Just a little freestyling, me and you, except this time we're talking about Mid-South. And this was actually your idea, and you were so excited about it that you went into your archives and found some cool little companion pieces for today's show.
Well, I kind of long time ago, when I would do these different things for the Book of Face and instant photo and things like that.
Yep.
And I would go back like this day in history, if you will. Now, this is what's freaky. And I said, me.
Yep.
That I have all this shit, but I rarely look at it. And I just picked up from 1983 appointments. I'm showing it to you. I know this is not show and tell for our folks that are listening to this on the podcast. And I just start thumbing through because it was a daily thing, and I would always write down everything that happened in my day, kind of like a journal.
Right.
All right. And Bill Watts became a partner in Houston wrestling sometime, I believe, in 82 or 83-ish. But he came in after a particularly great show that was put on in the Coliseum that Paul had booked. That was JYD and Nick Bockwinkel on top for the AWA World's Heavyweight Championship. And then there was Gino Hernandez and Tommy Rich in a hot personal issue inside of a solid steel cage. Now, the Rich Gino program was something that was very personal and that had been booked along the way. The Bockwinkel dog issue was about the championship, but it had also gotten personal as Bockwinkel had taken his big-ass boombox that JYD used to carry in the ring and actually destroyed it on the head of JYD, making that match personal. Sold out hanging from the rafters in the Sam Houston Coliseum. Everybody gets great paydays. Gino's not happy with his payday. So Gino Hernandez, who he felt he drew the house with Tommy Rich, because Tommy was red hot on Atlanta TV, the Superstation. And there was a little animosity, and Gino came into the office to complain, and Paul wrote Gino a check to make up for the difference that Gino had felt he was owed.
Yeah.
Okay. Right about that same time, Paul's, kind of feeling a little burnout on the business, and he's sick of dealing with the boys. He's sick of dealing with all these egos. And a phone call comes. That phone call came in the form of the Cowboy, Bill Watts. And Cowboy said, "Hey, Paul, you ever thought about selling your territory? Selling Houston?"
Did anybody, you think, give Bill a heads up? Or was it really just perfect time?
Well, we were getting JYD from Watts. So JYD was on loan from Mid-South. So Bill knew of the business that they were doing in Houston with the dog.
So JYD would have reported back, "Oh, Bill, they got it hot up there," or whatever.
Yeah. And so Bill, Bill was a student of the game. No one's ever going to accuse Bill of not knowing what the hell he was doing, except sometimes. We'll get to that. But Bill, definitely was smart guy in the wrestling business. And Bill called and said, "You want to sell?" And then they came back to, what if I came in and we partnered on Houston? And I bought in. Because Bill was seeing he's sending his stars there. They're making all this money for Paul Bosch. While in Bill's mind, Bill's building these stars to come in and work Houston to make money.
Yeah, so why not?
Bill wanted his piece, wanted more.
Yes.
So deal was done, and Bill Watts owned 1/3 of the Best of Texas Wrestling. The Best of Texas Wrestling was the corporate name of Houston Wrestling. There were 4 partners. There was Paul Bosch. There was the nephew. The nephew owned 2/3 of a third. And there was Nick Bockwinkel, who owned 1/3 of a third. You got me now?
Yep.
And then Watts owned a third.
Got it.
Okay. So now Watts comes in, and Watts starts bringing in his guys. And at first he wants to try and work with Joe Blanchard and the Southwest Championship Wrestling booking office that we had been using. And Bill was trying to use some of those guys and maybe go into San Antonio, which Joe Blanchard wasn't really fond of either, and felt that maybe we'd have this super territory of Texas and Louisiana and Oklahoma, Mississippi and Arkansas, and just, a pretty bigger stake in the pie, if you will. And Joe wasn't really interested in the talent. Some of the talent came and worked for Bill, but they didn't like the long drives, and they didn't like working for Bill they didn't really like Bill. So when Bill came in, the booker was Ernie Ladd. And Ernie was an interesting cat, if you will. The big cat, Ernie Ladd, get on the phone and call somebody, let them know we're coming in. So things were run a little bit differently, and it was run the way Bill ran things, which was cool. But it's funny, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at March 25th, Friday, March 25th, 1983. And we went into the show, and I was the ring announcer and timekeeper. In the last match, and it's funny how I write notes, it was like screwed up finish of main event. Rang bell early, referee Ricky Ferrara. He signaled for the bell, kept telling me to ring the bell, and I did. But then he came over and says, "Why are you ringing the bell?" I said, "Well, because you told me to." And that was that. Bill got pissed off because Bill felt that I fucked up the finish because I rang the bell when the referee told me to. But he did tell me to. I'm telling you, Connie, he told me to.
So would you have been privy to creative ahead of time? Like, do you know what they're going to do in the match at that point? Or are you just solely relying on signals?
At that point, solely just relying on, hey, we'll call it in the ring, kid.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know. I had an idea. I usually knew what the finish was for the most part, but you
didn't know if something changed in the match or what have you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you go with the referee's lead.
So a minute ago, when you were I realize we're talking more about Houston, but we are talking about your experience with Bill. When you talked about a third of a third and 2/3 of a third, was the nephew gifted the 2/3 of a third, or did he actually exchange American currency for that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he would tell you that he paid for it, but I'm sure there was some kind of swindle in there. And even if he did pay for it, I'm sure he got that money back in other ways through the years.
What about Bockwinkel? Was his a financial trade or more of an appearance thing?
Bockwinkel's was a financial trade. The idea with Bockwinkel was that Nick was going to come in and retire.
Yeah.
And eventually run Houston. He was going to move to Houston and run there. So it was, that was Nick's deal. That was Nick's vision of his future.
I guess what I was driving at is if Bill Watts. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe this is real, but we not only got a handicapper, but we got the best ever. How are you so good at handicapping these games? I mean, 4-0, that's quite a streak already.
Well, let's talk about every pick I've given this year in the NFL as an example. 23-8. Every pick I've given this year. 4 weeks in the bag, 23-8. There's nobody in the country that can match what I do, but I always make sure, because anybody, Conrad, could make up anything. They could tell you and blow smoke and tell you, oh, I'm the greatest. But I am independently monitored and documented, so nobody could ever question what I say and go, I don't believe it. I send every pick to an independent monitoring and documentation service that has to get the pick before the game goes off and then publishes it after the game goes off so anybody can see what I gave. But this is the best start I've ever had. I've never been this good to start a season. You don't win every week, 4 weeks in a row, everything you put out. It's been the kind of year I've had. So get on a hot streak, because when a guy's on a hot streak like me, you want to ride it. I've always had a talent for picking winners. Never quite as hot as I am right now, but I've always been very good at it. And I think it's because I do more homework than anybody else. The average guy or gal watching this podcast, they don't have time. They have a career. They have jobs. They might read the newspaper or go online and see something, but they don't have time 80 hours a week to study the games. That's what I do. And I have a crew of guys behind me, my consultants, who every week we get together 3 times a week and they throw their ideas at me. I throw my ideas at them. And then I pick the final 5 plays on Saturday and Sunday in college and pro football. So, I mean, I've got a great team behind me too, but we're all doing together hundreds of hours of homework. So you don't have to. It's all at vegaswinners.com.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to vegaswinners.com right now. Let's win some money. Did buy part of Houston in cash. What do you reckon his third would have cost him?
God, I think it was in the $50,000 range.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's way more reasonable than I thought.
Yeah, because the money's on the other side.
What do you mean?
Well, the money's on the other side. You're not going to go in and you're not buying profit. Everything they had before that was theirs, and it's a promotion business. It's buying in to be able to participate in the houses that you create.
Okay, with it, I understand.
Yeah. So the card on that night. Now check out this, man. This was the card for Houston Wrestling on March 25th, 1983. We opened up with 4. Now, I'm reading here, folks. This is not me saying this. I'm reading from a wrestling program in 1983.
So not
March
your own
25th.
handwriting, but the actual program.
This actual program.
Okay.
4 of the world's best midgets tangle in exciting action. We had Lone Eagle and Cowboy Lang
Wow.
versus Little Tokyo and Ivan the Terrible. Now, Ivan the Terrible was actually Wee Willie Wilson. No, wait. No, Ivan was Wee Willie. May have been Little Brook. I don't know. But it was a weird little thing in there because Little Brook's son was Karate Kid. But he never billed him as his son or, very simple. Okay. Art Cruz versus the Black Ninja. Ooh.
Ninjas in a program in 83. I like it.
Black ninjas, not white ninjas, black ninjas.
Of course, the best kind.
Yes. Hacksaw Butch Reed versus, you ready for this?
Ready.
Marty Lundy.
Oh, wow. How about
I
that?
wonder who went over there.
That'd be Hacksaw Butch Reed.
Yep. Tito Santana versus Blackie Gordman.
That's Dave Silva's favorite wrestler, old Tito.
Blackie Gordman?
Tito, flying burrito.
Okay. Junkyard Dog versus Kamala. Now, Ted DiBiase was barred from the building on this evening, though. It's pretty bad. And then the final match, which was a 6-man tag, Chavo Guerrero, Mr. Wrestling number 2, not number 1. 2.
Who's the best one? Number 2 was the best one.
Oh, God. I will never understand how he got over. I'm not denying that he got over. I just don't get it.
So you preferred Mr. Wrestling number 1?
I thought Tim Woods was a better attraction, yeah.
Okay.
And they faced the Super Destroyer, Hacksaw Duggan, and Matt Bourne.
Sounds like a hell of a team.
Yeah. And so I fucked up the finish in that one by ringing the bell too early, apparently. But that's what I do, Connie. I fuck finishes up.
Well, let's start at the beginning of Mid-South. I guess it really begins with Leroy McGurk as the NWA Tri-State Territory. He was covering Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Before we even discuss what NWA Tri-State is, you got any memories of Leroy McGurk? I know he was Jim Ross's original mentor, if you will, but from your perspective, what was your experience, if any, with Leroy?
I did not know Leroy. Didn't know Leroy. I knew of Leroy, and he was one of the great junior heavyweight champions of our time and a hell of an amateur wrestling, and kind of based his territory on, good, solid amateur wrestlers turned pro. It wasn't as big. Of course, he had them. Everybody had them, but he wasn't as big on guys that didn't have any real wrestling experience in his territory. He wanted tough guys, real wrestlers, so you can't see through it. Because, by God, in Oklahoma, they got to have real wrestlers. That's what they got to have. They ain't going to buy this sizzle and this bullshit. So Leroy was that type of a promoter. Bill worked for Leroy as booker and also as top hand for many years. And his legend has it, and I don't know any of this to be true, so I'm reporting this as only rumor and innuendo and gossip, is that, Bill stole the business from a blind man.
Well, that's what
Leroy was blind.
That's what I wanted to talk about. How difficult... can you imagine how difficult it would be to run a wrestling business as a blind man? Obviously that's going to be an issue in any walk of life, no matter what you choose, but goodness.
I got a better one for you.
Okay.
Leroy did color on the television shows.
Which is just crazy when you think about it. I mean, that's a story that I think more people should celebrate in wrestling. Wouldn't you agree?
it was, I mean, he would listen and he would listen to the commentator, and the commentator would tell him basically who was on top, and then McGurk would go from there.
It's just fascinating.
Not everyone knew he was blind.
And you never met him?
Never met Leroy. No, I met his daughter, Mike.
What did Paul think of Leroy?
Paul, he knew Leroy. I think that he liked Leroy, but he definitely disagreed with the way that Leroy ran his territory. Wasn't really fond of the style and the talent that Leroy used at that time.
Tell me about that. What do you mean specifically?
Well, for the most part, they were boring. Mike George, who is, I'm sure, actually, from everything I've heard, an absolutely great guy. I never met Mike, but Mike George was on top there for a long time. Don't call me yellow. Buck Robley was in there. Bill was in there, and they had some great talent in Bill Watts and Ernie Ladd and Ted DiBiase throughout the years, but they focused on the guys that could, actually wrestle. And it was just a different philosophy. It was kind of slow and more in the, hey folks, this is real versus, hey folks, we got a story to tell you. The Great Mephisto just threw a fireball at Ivan Putski. And it was a different philosophy and just geographically very close. And those in Beaumont and Port Arthur, they were getting the Mid-South show from Lake Charles, Louisiana, and they saw it and they had a hunger for it, because that was during the time that they were starting to build this guy by the name of the Junkyard Dog. And that was after Bill had bought it. But somewhere in there, Bill went in and bought the territory.
Before we get to that, I want to ask, as a kid, where you lived, were you able to see the Tri-State product at all?
No, I got it from I got all their programs. Tom got all their programs. So we would keep up to date with everything that was going on there through their programs. And those were done through the guy in Minnesota, Norman Keitzer and Jim Melby.
And when you're talking about the Cowboy, I believe that Leroy really sort of built NWA Tri-State really around him. And he had mostly been splitting his time, there in championship wrestling from Florida. But I guess what I'm trying to drive at, let's talk about Bill Watts as an in-ring performer. Why do you think McGurk built around him? Why was he the guy?
What's that?
Why was he the guy?
Bill was a huge man. He was a big man, tough guy, legit background in football, and I believe he wrestled as well. But Bill had real credentials. And Bill had also he'd done his stint in New York, and he had done his stint in Florida and Georgia and also Louisiana, but his home was Tulsa.
So he was big and he was believable.
He was big and he was believable. Exactly.
So what did you think of Bill Watts as a performer? Did you ever, as a kid, see his stuff on TV?
I've seen, no, I didn't. But as years went on, I saw a lot of Bill's stuff from Florida and Georgia and of course the Mid-South. And Bill was a good worker.
Could you compare him to someone that some of our audience might be familiar with?
Probably like a hacksaw Jim Duggan, a big rugged guy that can wrestle. And that was Bill, but he liked to brawl and things of that nature. But he was someone that you could put pretty much anywhere, whether it be in a wrestling arena or an airport, and people are going to turn their heads and look at him because he looked like somebody.
So what are your, what's the rest of the story as far as you've heard it, according to the rumor and innuendo about Cowboy purchasing the territory from Leroy? I mean, you sort of insinuated a minute ago that this is just rumor and innuendo, but the word is blah, blah, blah. that he stole it. What were the particulars that you heard about that transaction that would have put Leroy maybe in the rearview mirror and Bill in the driver's seat?
Just that, Bill offered to buy it from him, and that Bill offered him a price. Leroy agreed because Leroy was ready to get out of the business. And some people say that Bill never paid him any money, or didn't pay him all the money that Leroy was earned, just went in and took over the territory. And took all Leroy's guys. So Leroy didn't have anybody to really help him anymore.
Is that the way Bosch laid it out to you? No,
that's just through the years, what you would hear from different talent and everything. And a lot of that's rumor and innuendo. I don't know. I don't know any of that to be true. I do know that Leroy was the owner at one time, and then Bill was the owner.
You've given us your opinion on quote unquote rumors before. Do you believe that one?
I believe the truth lies probably somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I would believe that Bill probably went to Leroy and said that I'd like to buy your territory. Maybe it fell apart in the middle, but Bill was already in it and got the territory.
Let's talk a little bit about, just wrestling in that era, because I do think context is king, as our friend Eric Bischoff likes to say. A wrestler owning part of a territory is probably like the goal for a lot of the guys back in that day, right? I mean, just with any other job, right? You're looking for a way to move up the ladder. You're looking for a way to get a promotion, so to speak. And this feels like, hey, I'm going to go from being the top star to the only place to go from there is being one of the owners. Here I am. That's the next logical step. That's the goal for a lot of guys in that era, right?
In order to stay in the business, yeah, I think so. And a lot of guys, it wasn't so much where you worked, it was how long you were able to work there.
Yeah.
So if you came into a territory and you got over really big and you could maintain and stay in that territory for many years, then that was good. Oh my God, I got to buy a house. Like Pat Patterson would tell me about San Francisco. Hey, he got there and after a year or so realized I'm staying here. And he got over and stayed there for 10, 12 years, however long he did, bought a big, beautiful house and was set. Short trips. And that would be the goal, I think, for a lot of guys.
Do you think, becoming a quote unquote territory owner was the goal because A, they wanted to make more money, or B, they wanted to stop the travel, or C, they really just wanted to work less as far as the in-ring physicality?
Well, for a lot of them, their working days and taking bumps were over.
Yeah.
So if they had an opportunity, and again, these are all few and far between who ever get to realize the
dream of owning a territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of them just aren't made up for it. Some of them are just made up to go out and do their match and come back and go to the next town. Other guys are made up for, hey, let's think about what we're going to do here for the next year. And who are some guys I know that could come in and pop this territory?
So Watts is going to rebrand the company as Mid-South Wrestling. And he does something a lot of people probably were scratching their head about. He pulls out of the NWA. What'd you think of, let's take that step by step. What'd you think of Bill rebranding as Mid-South Wrestling?
I thought at the time, not the smartest move in the world. However, upon reflection, when you look back at it, it was brilliant because why should Bill get his guys and his talent in his territory, get them over just to have one guy from a place with 3 letters come in and beat his guys, or have them go 90-minute Broadway or whatever you want to do. And Bill felt, he goes, I'll make my own champions. I'll make my talent worthy, and that they're the ones that are there every week. So that's who people are going to pay to see. And it just wasn't worth dealing with the NWA. The NWA was not an easy organization to work with either, especially in the 80s when they started switching from Mushnick to Atkinson to Geigel to, it was a bouncing ball on who the president was in the NWA. It was not a very good run company. It just wasn't.
When do you think that whole transaction would have happened, if you will? Would that have been the late 70s? That's when Mid-South becomes a thing?
I believe it was late 70s, early 80.
Yeah. I was thinking like 79, 80, somewhere in there. But again, we're just sort of freestyling today and letting you tell stories. But I am curious, with respect to the NWA, do you think that perhaps Bill saw the writing on the wall that the NWA, the way it had existed for years and years, was becoming more complicated? I mean, less than a decade after this, it's not really a thing. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, do you think Cowboy saw the writing on the wall maybe before everybody else did?
I think that Cowboy looked at his business strategy and thought what was best for him.
Yeah.
For him as Bill Watts to create a champion, his North American champion, make that the main championship that people can see every week, versus taking a part of your television show and having to build up a guy who's only in the territory for one night. And your talent that you're stuck with year round gets beat or doesn't win. So when you go back and you think about that the attraction and the monopoly of the National Wrestling Alliance, that guys felt that they had to have the champion, and there were a lot of guys, and Bill kind of used Roy Shire as someone that he looked up to and learned an awful lot from. Was a lot of same mannerisms, but Roy didn't use the NWA champion. It's like, fuck them. Why should I pay them for a champion that comes in once a year?
Let me ask, you just said, you referenced wins and losses. Like, this guy's going to come in with 3 letters and he's going to beat our top guy. I understand that, but I do want to add some context here. Do you think wins and losses mattered more back then than they do now? And if so, what changed?
Well, really and truly, they probably didn't. It was just something that, when you're building someone when it's time for them to lose, give it to one of your own stars. Give it to a guy you're going to be able to make money with next week and the week after and the week after. It's not about, winning and losing. It's who you're winning and losing to. And it's just have a guy come in with no program other than a leather strap with some metal on it. It didn't do anything for your territories when you think about it in hindsight.
So even though Watts was not really keen on being a member of the NWA, he still booked the NWA champion. So he was kind of getting the best of both worlds here, right? I mean, he can still have the NWA champ as an attraction, but maybe not have to be subjected to so many of the NWA rules.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, Bill was able to do that and pull that off. Not everybody was, because not everybody wanted to. And Bill only did it for big shows and did it with guys that were not in a program at the time, a lot of the time.
What do you think Paul thought of Bill not being a part of the NWA?
Well, Paul wasn't a part of the NWA at the time either. So Paul had been ostracized by the NWA years ago after the Harley race fiascos and Harley no-showing all those shows, and just the lack of support from Mushnick and Geigel and Atkinson that was the last straw, broke the camel's back, and Paul was done.
Let's talk about Paul, because eventually Leroy gets involved with Paul in Houston. What do you remember of how that came to be?
I don't remember Leroy getting involved with Paul in Houston in the 80s. He may have through the years, but just with the talent exchange, but nothing nothing major.
So Leroy just sort of winds it down. Is he in any sort of regular communication with Paul?
No, because we didn't work with that office that much. It was, I think that the feeling was it was too close, that there would be a little bit of confusion in the marketplace. But then again, when Dog got hot, JYD, when he got hot, it was like, how can you fucking not bring this guy in?
What do you think Paul made of the way everything happened between, Paul and Bill? Not Paul and Bill, but Leroy and Bill. What do you think Paul made of that? Like, was he skeptical of what type of businessman Bill would be, or did he just chalk it up to the rumor and innuendo?
I think he just chalked it up to the rumor and innuendo. And you also have to look at the success that Bill had afterwards.
Yeah.
Because Bill came in and Bill bought the territory, and Bill was a very aggressive promoter, and Bill made that territory successful. So you got to look at that and say, all right, well, maybe this guy's got something. It would have died under Leroy.
You got to see a little bit, or at least hear a little bit about Tri-State. And then of course you're going to get to see some Mid-South. What do you think the difference was? Like the way Leroy ran the territory, and then once Bill gets his hands on it, he went in and changed what?
The presentation. I think that Bill made it a little bit, believe it or not, a little younger and hipper, even though it wasn't always that way. But Bill changed the attitude of the promotion from a staunch wrestling. Bill made it a little bit more rough and tough and more story driven, where everything had a story, and it wasn't just about, well, even though some people would take you there at some point, this 18-time All-American, and this guy, won the Kentucky Derby in 4.5 minutes and that kind of shit. It just didn't. He wanted stories. He wanted guys to go out and work hard, be able to perform in the ring, but he had stories around him.
Let's look at his talent roster from 1980. I'm going to do a little name association. I'm going to throw a name out there and you can chime in whenever you'd like. But this is who Watts is really getting his hands on in 1980 with Mid-South. Ox Baker.
Heart Punch.
Ron Garvin.
Okay.
Brian Blair.
Bzzz.
Tully Blanchard.
Tully was just in and out, so he doesn't even count.
Hulk Hogan.
Same with Hulk. Hulk only came down when Senior would book him down.
Larry Booker. Stephen Little Bear.
No.
Ray Candy.
Now, Ray Candy, man, was a hell of a hand back in the day. Ray had ungodly charisma, and Ray could go, man. Ray was very popular.
Your boy, Bob Sweetan.
Stinky.
Leroy Brown.
Not a fan.
Lynn Denton, the grappler.
Lynn Denton was badass, man. Lynn Denton was a hell of a talent that is in the discussions about great workers throughout the years and great masked men. Lynn Denton and the Grappler is a name that is left off way too many times. Very underrated.
People are going to be upset if I don't circle back. Why were you not a fan of Leroy Brown?
Well, because he wanted to kill me one night. He was very difficult to do business with.
He wanted to kill you.
Very difficult. Huh?
He wanted to kill you.
Yeah, Jennings, Louisiana.
And why did he want to kill you?
Because I was running the show that night, and Bill had instituted a no-draw policy, which meant that talent couldn't get cash from the gate night of. That if they needed money and they needed cash, and they would have to call Bill, and Bill would have to personally approve it. And I called Bill, and Bill said, fuck him. He get his check on Tuesday, and Tulsa. And told Leroy that. And he says, well, then I'm walking out. And told Bill, I said, well, he says he's walking out. He goes, no, fuck him. Fire him. Right now, fire him. And I wasn't going to do that because we were in Jennings, Louisiana with roughly 120 people in the audience. And I didn't feel like firing Bad Leroy Brown in Jennings, Louisiana on that night. Thought, you know what, Bill? I'll have him call you. I told Leroy to call Bill. And Leroy didn't want to call Bill. Leroy wanted money I didn't have. Since I didn't give it to him, went to go get his knife out of his bag and come kill me. Yeah. Thank you to Sting and Rob Rexsteiner for
Not
at least
letting
being
him
there
kill
and
you.
making sure he didn't kill me.
Well, that was nice of him.
It was very nice of him. I've never forgotten that.
Huh. Dory and Terry Funk.
God's gift to wrestling.
Frenchie Martin.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? Frenchie Martin taught me how to smoke marijuana on a plane.
Here in Mid-South?
No, actually in WWE.
Yeah. And he told you to go to the bathroom?
Go to the bathroom. I don't want to tell people how to do that. You shouldn't do that, folks.
The Assassin.
Was that Jody? I don't even know which assassin this was.
Buddy Roberts.
First name Free, last name Bird. Deep.
Bill Irwin.
Bill Irwin was Scott Irwin's brother. Scott was Super D, and Bill was a hell of a hand. I just don't know that Bill ever had the charisma and that extra ingredient that his brother Scott had.
What about his brother Scott, the Super Destroyer? What can you tell us about him?
He was just an unbelievably charismatic guy that was able to exude that charisma through the mask that he wore. His work in the ring was very unique and made him stand out in that regard.
Toru Tanaka.
Toru Tanaka, when I was 14 years old, he was the first guy that was in the ring when I had my announcing debut, and I asked everyone to play or to stand for the playing of our national anthem. And then when I introduced Toru, I introduced him from Yokohama, Japan, instead of Yokohama.
Steve Lawler.
Don't know Steve.
What about Jerry Lawler? Jerry came through.
Jerry, absolutely. And Jerry was always one of those special treats that would come through and dazzle you with his mouth. And, I don't know a place that Jerry went that Jerry didn't draw money.
No argument from me. Ken Mattel.
Ken Mantell, man. Kenny was junior heavyweight champion, and Ken was a tremendous worker in his day, good talker. But I think that Ken Mantell will go down more than anything as the mind and the booker behind World Class's huge expansion.
Austin Idol.
Conrad?
Yep.
What year were you born?
1981.
1981. You should ask your parents sometimes about, in 1981, did they ever think that they'd walk down grocery stores and see rows and rows of bottles of water? That's right. We're talking about the stuff that comes out of your tap.
Okay.
We're talking about the same thing that you get for free. I mean, you pay a little bit to the city for it, but you get it for free. Right there in your own home. Now, sometimes it may not be the cleanest, but you can clean it. You can purify it, just like they do, and they put it in the bottles. But instead of paying 50 cents or $1 for a bottle of water, it costs you pennies to have the same water. I want you to think about something. What's that nice water thing that was real big when you were a kid in 1981? Was it called Avion?
Okay.
Spell Avion backwards for me. Tell me what you get.
Well, I mean, I think it's NOI.
No. No, Avion. Evian. Avion.
Oh. Okay.
Spell it backwards.
Naive.
What's that spelled, Conrad?
I think it's naive.
Naive. That's what I'm talking about right there. You're naive to think that the water in the grocery store on those aisles is any better than the water that you can get at home right out of your faucet that you're drinking right now. And I can sell you a filter for your home that'll make your water taste better than that water you're tasting right now. And you know what? You can help your friends, and you can sell your friends too. All you got to do is inform them, because everybody drinks water. You know anybody that doesn't drink water?
I don't.
Well, there you go. So you can help them get healthier. You can help them be good. And you can save them money while making money yourself. It's the only thing I think of whenever I think of Austin Idol, because that's what Austin did. Austin would sell water purifiers. If there was a get-rich-quick scheme, Austin did it. And the thing about it is Austin could walk into a grocery store.
He did the Evian pitch to you.
Oh, yeah.
Naive.
Think about it. What's that spell?
Yeah.
Naive. Because everybody that buys it, they're just naive. It's just water in a bottle.
It's tremendous.
That's all it is. What spring did that come from? Do you really know?
And so anyway, he would go into a grocery store, you were saying.
And he would just walk up, and he would like to hang out in the water. Hey, darling, how you doing? That's some nice water you got there.
He'd hang out in the water aisle.
Yeah.
I love this guy.
Or in the fucking vegetable aisle, either one, and just say, hey, wouldn't you like to be healthier? You look like you take care of yourself. You look like you're pretty healthy. You buying all this bottled water. I mean, can I ask you a question? You got water at home? You got a faucet? I mean, I hope you do. I hope you live in a dwelling that provides you with a faucet that provides you with water. I don't know anybody that can live without water. But here you're spending all this money on water that you got, and I'm sure you live in a beautiful home. So let me help you. You can help me by letting me help you. And by the way, tell your friends. Here's my card. Austin Idol.
You've just made my life. Thank you. I got to meet him for the first time a couple of months back. Super nice guy. Glad I got to meet him.
Yeah.
But now that I have the water perspective, I don't know that I'll ever be able to unhear it.
Oh, dude. And here's the best part. Fast forward to like 1980. No, actually, it's in the early 90s in my hiatus. I had some friends, and I was just roaming around Houston being very self-destructive, and they tell me that they're going to take me out, and we're going to go to this meeting that his wife has at her work. It's going to be a real short meeting, but they said we could bring people and everything, and then we're going to go to this bar because they're going to introduce me to this girl. And I said, so help me God, if this is a water pitch, I'm going off. I said, that's not a water pitch. What are you talking about? So I gave them the whole Austin spiel.
Yeah.
And I said, here's what they're going to do. They're going to get us in a room. They're going to give us shitty cookies. They're going to give us coffee. And I'm going to bring my Diet Coke in. And they're going to say, oh, well, do you drink water? And I said, you just watch. And I says, no, this is live. It's a pre-tape deal. And I said, it's all fake. And it's all this other shit. And sure enough, man, the guy opens up with that Austin Idol thing. And I'm doing it in the audience. And it was just like, when I say in the audience, there were probably like 30, 40 people there. And I'm doing the spiel. But I'm doing it like Austin Idol. And before he even gets to the naive part, I said, hey, what's that behind you? You got your some Avion water. Hey, I'm curious. What does Avion spell backwards? Naive, folks. You're naive if you believe any of this bullshit. And it was hilarious.
Did he flip out on you?
He tried to be really nice, but the way they did it was a pre-tape deal, but they had people that would ask questions that they would pick on that they knew that was how he was going to answer it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so tell me, Conrad, that's a wonderful crown you got in the background there. What's the story on that? And you answered the story on the crown, but they're not going to let anybody that they don't know and it's all in order. So
yeah,
because I raised my hand on every question and they wouldn't pick on me.
Well, Bruce, that's what we need. More Austin Idol content. What about Wahoo McDaniel?
The greatest Native American wrestler ever to put on a pair of boots.
Would you say that in front of Tatanka and Chief J Strongbow?
I've said it in front of Jerry Briscoe.
Oh.
Jack Briscoe would probably be up there as well as one of the greatest Native Americans ever put on a pair of boots. Wahoo was badass, though. Wahoo was just, if you describe Wahoo one word, tough.
Yeah.
But great. Good Lord, he was great.
Is he the first guy who had like next level chops that you saw?
He's the only guy that had chops. You know, people didn't use chops back then.
Yeah.
Wahoo did, because it was the Indian tomahawk chop that he called it. So it was off of his Native American heritage, and they would call it a tomahawk chop, and that's how the chop kind of came to be.
What about Rip Oliver?
Rip Oliver, man. Rip's another one who is underrated when it comes to work, and Rick and Lynn Denton both kind of retired and faded away into the Pacific Northwest later on in their careers. But Rip was a journeyman. He was a middle of the road kind of guy.
Terry Orndorff.
Don't know Terry. Never met him.
Killer Khan.
Killer Khan. Khan was, I think he may have been, I know his build is Mongolian, but he may be, I don't know, but really sweetheart of a guy. Really, really nice guy.
Isn't it true that he was Nick Khan's uncle? That's what I read online.
Really?
Killer is the uncle of Nick. I've seen it.
Yeah.
So you should ask Nick about it next time you're in the
you know what?
I
probably were there awards given in that magazine that you were reading?
Nope, there weren't.
No awards in that column.
No.
Okay.
You got to ask Nick about his Uncle Killer.
Uncle Killer?
Uncle Killer.
Ivan. Oh my God. How's Uncle Killer doing?
Dude, hit him with that. Just see what happens. Report back. Let us know next week here on the program.
Don't worry. You think I'm scared?
Oh no, I know you're not. Ivan Koloff.
Ivan Koloff, Red. One of the most fantastic athletes and in shape. And what I mean by that is he could go at a pace that guys half his size couldn't go. Just an incredible athlete, an incredible performer.
Butch Reed.
That's all Butch Reed. It's the drugs and the ripple talking to you, Prichard. It's the drugs and the ripple. Butch, man, extraordinary athlete, extraordinary guy. He invented the arrow.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I knew he had invented Netflix.
Yeah, well, Netflix and the sealant, that goes around like picture frames and everything.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, he invented that too.
He was a real entrepreneur. I mean, an inventive type. Yeah.
Yeah. Before Yeti coolers.
Yep.
Yeah, he had these they're called Bruceys.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you were just stone cold babyface.
Right.
What about Tommy Rich?
Wildfire Tommy Rich. Somebody say something about fire up. Well, I say I'm a little bit fucked up right now. Goddamn, let's go. Hey, yeah, Charlie Race. This Sunday in the Omni.
You got any good marijuana stories about Tommy Rich?
I'm embarrassed to even tell this story, but I will. Riding with Tommy one time from, I think we were in Birmingham, Alabama, to his place outside of Atlanta. And I was in the backseat of the car, and Tommy turns around. Tommy pours out, like in a bottle, pours out a bunch of pills. And when I say a bunch of pills, we're talking like probably a dozen or more.
Oh.
Okay, in his hand, and takes them. Pours out a bunch in the other passenger's hand and takes them. Did you want some? I'm like, well, okay. I didn't want to feel left out. And he pours a bunch of them, and there's like yellow ones and green ones and blue ones and red ones, all this shit. I said, what is it? Ain't nothing gonna kill you. So I took them.
Oh, gosh.
And then we got home about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to his place, and everybody else had a room except me, and so I slept on the couch in the living room. And at about 6 o'clock in the morning, rise up, you just get right in, you almost get into that deep REM sleep. I hear the ice bucket, and he's like, hey, we want beer? I said, Jesus Christ, man, didn't we just get in? I got to go to sleep. Hey, have a beer. And then he rolls a joint. We start to smoke, and his little girl came out, and she came out to see Daddy. And he says, baby, go on back into the bedroom with your mama. You know you ain't supposed to be out here with Daddy smoking joint. And I thought that was like just... That was a surreal moment, but that's one of those I'll never forget, because it was just like, all right, I'm in Georgia now. Boy, howdy.
Yeah, you doing your Tommy Rich about.
Baby, you ain't supposed to be out here day smoking joint now. You know that. Well, damn, baby.
Just so everybody knows, Bruce has done that every now and again to me for more than 5 years, and it tickles me every time. It's never not funny. Jose Lothario.
Super Sock Jose Lothario, another one underrated, but I don't know that Jose ever got over any place like he did in Houston. Yeah, everywhere else he was just kind of a mid-card guy.
Andre the Giant was through.
Oh, I like you.
Mike Sharp.
Iron Mike Sharp, man. Iron Mike Sharp used to take showers for hours. Showers for hours, folks. And then he would dry off, but he would also work out for hours after the show. And I mean, he would do the wheel for his stomach. He would do push-ups. He would do sit-ups. He would do pull-ups. Sweat. Oh my God, he would sweat. And then he would take showers. And his showers they were legendary. And as legend has it, I think they were in Louisville, Kentucky, and Mike was downstairs in one of the rooms in the cavern down there underneath in the dressing rooms. And they just locked up the Louisville Civic Center, Louisville Gardens, while Mike was down there working out and showering because nobody knew he was even down there.
Stan?
He used to have rolls of toilet paper in his bag.
Wow, he was like a pre-COVID hoarder.
Yeah, kind of, man. And he would always like clean out his nose and like take the toilet paper and clean out his nose and blow his nose and just but he was always sweating, and he was the cleanest son of a bitch I'd ever met in my life.
Mr. Wrestling number 2, we've already sort of touched on.
Crotchety old bastard.
Tony Atlas.
Tony No Show. You know Tony, man. Tony's Tony. And Tony was great. But there were times that as soon as Tony would get hot, Tony would have a tendency not to show up for them big shows.
No Show Tony. Huh.
No Show Tony. Tony No Show.
George Wells.
Oh, wow. Put in Ernie Ladd's words. George Wells, you're the drizzling shits. Well, the first time I heard that comment, drizzling shits, was in regards to George Wells.
Jimmy Garvin.
Jimmy Jam. I mean, Jimmy was Jimmy. Jimmy did well in Dallas, and Jimmy did well in the Carolinas. But he was an entertaining son of a bitch, I tell you that.
Gino Hernandez.
What could have been?
You think Gino Hernandez and Tully Blanchard, I mean, their characters, it's almost like they were two sides of the same coin at times. Did you disagree?
Well, I would agree that they were definitely the same coin in many instances. Yeah.
Yeah.
Young, all the talent in the world. Gino handled his a lot differently than Tully did, and there you go.
So, what a stacked roster it is. You joined Mid-South Wrestling, or you at least start working a little bit with Watts. How does that come to be?
Well, Watts just, came in, and Bill would come in every week. And the weird thing was there was a bit of a different attitude and tone with the talent, because now that Bill came in, one of the things that Paul really disliked about running everything himself was doing payoffs, because Paul always paid the boys well. I think you could ask anyone that ever worked for Paul that Paul's payoffs were head and shoulders above anybody else in the business. It was always Paul Bosch, Sam Mushnick, and Vince McMahon that paid the best. But having Gino question that one payoff really made Paul just sick of dealing with the boys bitching, because times change.
Yeah.
So Bill Watts took over the pay when Watts bought in, and Bill took over the duties of paying the talent and went through the Mid-South booking office, and they got checks from Bill Watts. And all of a sudden, those payoffs for Houston were, in many cases, half of what they had been if Paul had done the payoffs. So Paul didn't have that, but he also had the realization of kind of looking at it and seeing it and saying, this guy probably deserves more. You might get more out of him. But they were working for Bill, and Paul stepped away. That was the deal. Paul didn't get involved in the pay. I could do the payoffs with Watts. I used to have to wait to get the payoffs from Georgianne, who was Watts' assistant, and write them down, and put them in the book so that we knew what went against our shows. I could do the payoffs because I knew Bill's formula.
What was the formula?
It was roughly, Paul went off of a 33%.
So the boys split a third, right?
Yeah, to the boys was 33%. Watts's was more like 20.
Okay.
But it's subjective in its feel, that it's hard to. It's like timing a show or laying out a show. It's not a science that you can go 2 + 2 = 7. It's a feel, it's a gut, and very quickly you can figure out someone else's gut and get the same feeling. And after you watch them and study their pay methods.
And the guys saw their pay get cut in half. What were you hearing about that?
Just that at first, the whole dangling the carrot of, hey guys, we're going to be going to Houston now, was, oh, fuck yeah, man, we're going to be going to Houston. We're going to be getting those great payoffs. And then it quickly became, oh shit, now we got to go to Houston, and Bill's doing the payoffs. Still, Houston was drawing more money than a lot of the other markets where Bill ran, and they made more money, but not as if it were Paul doing the payoffs.
So you becoming a part is really just through Paul. And you talked to Bromwell last week about making road trips with Jim Ross. Any other interesting travel stories from back in the day when you were here working with Mid-South?
Well, you know, the everybody lived in Alexandria, Louisiana, which was kind of the halfway point in between Oklahoma, Mississippi, Texas, all the towns in Louisiana. So most of the boys and the talent and everything lived in Alex. I did some road trips when we took over the merchandising and the concessions, where we went to all of the live events, and that was a short-lived situation for me anyway, because that left no one back in Houston to run the office. And Mid-South was a big, man, that was a driving territory. It was big. But Jim Ross and I used to travel together when we would do TV. You'd go on Friday night and you would do Houston TV and get on the plane, Southwest or American Airlines, on Saturday morning and fly to Dallas, Fort Worth, and we'd do television at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth. From there, you get on the plane the next morning and fly to Tulsa or Oak City, wherever we were doing TV on Sunday. And after television on Sunday night, you drove to Bixby, which is right outside of Tulsa, and stayed at the whatever it was, Quality Inn or Comfort Suites or whatever the hell it was, in Bixby, Oklahoma. Now, you know how much Uber Eats and Grubhub they got in Bixby, Oklahoma?
Probably none.
Yeah, that'd be zero.
Yeah.
And Domino's stopped at midnight.
Well, aren't all Domino's stopping eventually? Do you have a 24/7 Domino's hookup?
Well, in the beginning, they were 24 hours, or they were later than midnight.
I had no idea.
Because you were goddamn a little baby.
I'm just saying, even now, I don't think you can order pizza after midnight in Alabama.
Well, you should, especially in Alabama. I'm going to run for Pizza Congress in Alabama. I'm going to get you after midnight pizza.
Well, I'm supporting your platform right now.
Okay. Well, then we'll do that. You and me. You can be my co-supporter.
Sure. I'm in.
All right. So yeah, you had to get all your eating materials and all that shit before you went to the barn to do promos on Monday morning in the barn behind Bill's house. And it was actually a barn.
Okay. Tell me about when you first meet. I assume that's where you first meet Ted DiBiase and Dr. Death in Mid-South.
Yeah, DiBiase would come in, and Teddy's cheap. So, Teddy and I became friends, and so I would always give Ted a ride, and Ted would stay at my place, so he didn't have to get a hotel room. And we had a shitload of fun together. Ted was fun to party with and go out, and we just had an excellent time together. Got along real well. As Teddy and I kind of became running mates a little bit there. And Ted DiBiase is the one I was with that we went to the Jack in the Box down the street from where I lived and ordered the menu.
The whole menu.
The entire menu.
We want one of everything.
One of everything. Well, actually, but we got 6 tacos. One of everything, but add 5 tacos.
And whose idea was one of everything?
We were hungry.
And you had probably help.
It wasn't the extensive menu that it is now.
You had help getting hungry. Fair to say?
We had a lot of help getting hungry. Yeah, I was starving.
Yeah. Okay. I understand.
And I had enough to make me hungry again and again and again. So I wanted food. And Jack in the Box was one of those that stayed open 24 hours. But yeah, it was like they had a bonus jack, a jumbo jack, fish sandwich. I don't think they had a chicken sandwich. They had tacos. They had French fries, regular hamburgers, regular cheeseburgers, and onion rings, and that was it. So, I mean, it wasn't like a grandiose menu.
Well, you know how to tell a story. What about Dr. Death? You told us some DiBiase stuff. Anything with Death back in the day?
Dr. Death, man, Doc was absolutely a maniac, to say the least. And we had been out, and you and I talked about this one time, Cooters.
Oh, yeah. Everybody loves
Nightclub,
Cooters.
right there off Edgebrook and I-45 in Houston. And now it's La Hacienda, La Raza, something like that. And this was a great nightclub. I knew everybody there, and so we would go in there. And sometimes Doc would imbibe in a lot of different things. And I don't know that Doc really liked cocaine, but he loved the smell.
Got it.
And so we come out, and you always got the assholes. You can always pick them out. You know, always that's the one. That's the guy. When you walk into a bar, that's the guy that's going to, at the end of the night, come up and fuck with me. And sure enough, man, there were a group of guys as we're leaving the bar had to come fuck with us. And
like y'all are those phony wrestlers or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Doc basically ran these motherfuckers down in the parking lot. And the guy got in his big ass. He had a Bronco, huge, like lifted up, you know?
Yeah.
High Bronco. And Doc stood in the middle of the parking lot challenging the Bronco. Come on, run me over, pussy. Come on, I'll kill ya. And the guy was scared to death that Doc was going to hurt his Bronco.
So as he's challenging the Bronco, are you remembering all the smells he had enjoyed earlier in the night and wondering if that played a factor?
Oh boy. Yeah. And Teddy's like going, he goes, hey man, you know, he might listen to you. I'm like, look at him. He ain't going to listen to anybody.
Yeah.
And so I go over and I kind of try to like grab his arm and shit and go, come on, Doc, let's go, man. Fuck this shit. And the guy like has to have that one last comment. And Doc charges the Bronco, and the guy puts it in reverse, running. The guy's in a giant Bronco.
Yeah.
Like the
just run him over. Yeah.
Was as high as our head.
Yeah.
And a man is chasing him down, and he's backing up, terrified.
I love it.
And then Doc got on the Bronco and started shaking it and crawled up on the hood and things like that. And the guy shit his pants, and we finally got Doc in the car because there were some fine law enforcement officers that decided to pay a visit that time of night. And we had visited with enough during the night that we didn't want to visit with these particular police officers.
Sure.
So he laid down in the backseat of my car and we got out of there.
Chat me up about your old pal, good old JR.
JR and I, man, we would get in a car, and before we even got out of the parking lot for the rental car, Jim and I would get in the car. Now, it's a long flight from Houston to Dallas, almost an hour. And so that's a pretty long flight to go without being able to imbibe in the ganja. And so as soon as we would get someplace where we could, we'd get in that car, and I'd reach down and I'd pull out a nice material to fire up, and we would proclaim, we are going to die in this car tonight, and peel out of the deal, and we would hand them the little contract with our joint in our hand and just see you later, probably not, and take off and have a good time. We would go stay at the little Holodome there at Dallas Fort Worth Airport, and it was quite interesting. That's where we went to in Fort Worth, DiBiase and I. So we would have the matches at Billy Bob's, and Billy Bob's next door, world's largest honky tonk, they would have concerts. And Tanya Tucker was performing this one night. Tanya was wearing light blue spandex pants. And Ted and I are sitting front row. We're pretty fucked up. And we start looking at Tanya and notice that Tanya had a spot on her pants. It kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, God.
And it looked like a very moist spot.
Oh, God.
And we're pointing and laughing. And she notices this and she stops her concert. Just shuts it down. She says, well, I noticed a couple guys up here in the front row have found something to just kind of pinpoint up here and everything. And I'd like to point it out. Thank you, guys. But you know what they say? You always sweat where you're the hottest. And they take a little spotlight, put it right on her sopping wet crotch. And she walked off stage. And now everybody's pissed at DiBiase and I because they think that we've ruined it, ended the show. And she went back and put on a pair of jeans and came back out and finished the show. And she was cool with us. But yeah, she had she looked like she was sweating a lot down there.
All righty.
But it was fun. Yeah, we used to have a lot of fun down there because it was easy and it was kind of a close-knit group. And JR, it would be from time to time. JR at that time in his life loved to not be at home, and so he would come out and party. And Jim was fun, man. Jim, we had some fun. It was absolutely hilarious, but we had some fun.
Chat me up about Grizzly Smith, somebody you and I have not spent a lot of time talking about.
Yeah, because Grizzly was Grizzly, and a lot of things have come out about Grizzly, that a lot of rumor and innuendo, a lot of things, but when there's that much, it's
Did you ever see anything?
Just sad.
Did you ever scratch your head about something and say, what's up with that?
Yeah, I did. But at the same time, there were always logical explanations for it.
Yeah.
Or at least things that you will rationalize as logical in the moment, so as not to think the worst of someone. Grizzly did his job. Grizzly, he was a weird dude. And
did you learn anything from him? Like, did he have any, Brucey, when you're booking, you make sure you always or never forget but I mean, do you have any sort of words of wisdom that you ever learned from him in a positive way?
I think that I learned patience from Grizzly, because Grizzly was so fucking slow. He moved slow. He talked slow. And I learned patience. I learned how to listen, think, and then open my mouth. So in that regard, that was one thing that Grizzly did well. Grizzly would listen to you, wouldn't answer you right away, and would give you a thoughtful answer. So I've tried to incorporate that to this day.
Was he known as, we've heard other people say, oh, so-and-so was the best finished guy in the business. What was Grizzly's MO?
No, Grizzly was just the guy that carried out the orders from the office from Bill.
And he was big enough and tenured enough that he had the respect of the boys.
Yeah. And he was the office. He was the guy. So he was the one that normally would be the one in charge at the events. And, later on, Bill had a philosophy, which I also believe in, that Bill's bookers didn't work. When Ernie Ladd came in and booked, Ernie didn't work. Ernie just booked the territory. So when Bill Dundee came in and Bill had the book. I think that kind of flabbergasted Bill a little bit, but Bill didn't work. Every once in a while he would. He worked a little program with Adrian Street, but if they got in a pinch, Bill would work. But for the most part, Bill did not work. He was the booker. And I always thought that was smart on Bill's part, because it takes away that, oh, well, the booker's just putting himself on top.
Right.
And taking care of himself and putting himself in all the big programs. But Dundee coming in, man, Dundee kind of turned everything on its head. I think that Dundee hot-shotted the territory. And when I say hot-shotted the territory, I mean Bill threw everything under the sun at it. And maybe because he had to, because the territory was kind of on its ass. Brought in the Midnight Express and Cornette, brought in Terry Taylor, the Rock and Roll Express. Smaller, younger, more exciting guys. Still had your Duggins, still had your JYDs and Wrestling 2 stalwarts. But Bill did a lot more gimmick matches and gave a completely different feel to the territory. And I don't know that had Bill Dundee not come in at the time, that the Rock and Roll Express would be as big as they were.
Let's talk about Grizzly again, and then we'll move on. When was the first time you heard, whoa, wait a minute, that's not just a rumor? There really might be something going on there? Is that something that only happened in more recent years? Or what was the timeline on that when people started to say, wait a minute?
For me, it was after I left, but then it makes you go back and wonder about,
what about this?
things.
And what about that?
Yeah. But I didn't really realize it or understand it until after I was gone from there.
It's a weird thing. Sad. Let's talk about the pretty famous, one of the more famous angles that happened down there, the classic blinding angle with JYD. Let's contextualize who JYD was to Bill Watson just in that era and in this territory, and then catch everybody up on this famous blinding angle that people still, well, at least one person still talks about.
Well, how many times you fucking sell out Superdome?
I've been asked that at least 100 times.
Bitch.
Yeah.
Well, it was, it was classic, man. Here you had the fabulous Freebirds, Michael Hayes, Buddy Jack Roberts, and goddamn Terry Bam Bam Gordy. And it was just a hell of they were red hot. They were everything that the people in Louisiana, Oklahoma, hardworking country folk looking at these slick rock and roll fellers, in the Freebirds. It was hot, man. This was, before the time that I was working with them. Good Lord, everybody knew about it. And it was just such a great angle with the hair vanishing cream and putting the cream in JYD's eyes, and he's blind. And it's so simple. It's so simple. In a lot of ways, we did, the arrogance thing with Jake the Snake Roberts many years later. It was based on this same principle of taking your top babyface and blinding them. And the whole thing is JYD may never see again. And the dog collar match in the Superdome, that was the moment that everyone knew, all right, man, Michael Hayes is going to be chained to JYD. JYD may not be able to see, but he can feel, and Michael can't run. And that's the psychology behind it. And they got exactly what they were looking for. You had JYD who couldn't see a damn thing and used that all the way through it to get to the point of your climax of JYD finally getting his revenge, beating the living shit out of Michael Hayes. You ain't never sold out Superdome.
I have not.
Hey, Conrad.
Yes, sir.
You're sold out Superdome?
Not yet.
Fuck you.
Hey, so that angle really sort of put the Freebirds on the map nationally, did it not?
I think it did. I think it put them on the map from the standpoint of being attractions. Yes. They're, God, they were young.
Yeah, absolutely. Kids.
They were just so young. And Bill took a chance with them. And I don't know that a lot of people would have put up with Michael and his shenanigans. But Michael drew money. I make money for this company. Fuck you, deep.
So
I wonder if Michael said Duke back then. I bet he did.
The show drew 28,000 people to the Superdome. They had $183,000 at the gate. And then it's August 2nd, 1980. Let's do the quick rundown here. It's Andre versus Hogan, DiBiase versus Wrestling 2, Dusty and Buck Robley against the Freebirds, which is Buddy Roberts and Terry Gordy, in a double bull rope match. And then, of course, Michael Hayes and Junkyard Dog in a steel cage dog collar match. Were you at this show?
No. I didn't think I was born yet.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
Were you born yet in 1980?
No. I came out, I made my album debut. My album dropped about 10 months later.
Yeah, no, I was definitely not at this show. I was finishing up high school.
Chat me up about
young pop.
JYD in this era. I mean, some people have said he was the Hulk Hogan of Mid-South.
Yes, absolutely. JYD was probably bigger than Hulk Hogan in the Mid-South region. The son of a bitch came in, and Tom's first squash match on television was against the Junkyard Dog. And he went in, and basically Dog just, did the big thump and then threw him in a wheelbarrow and take him out to the junkyard. I can't do JYD. But, he would take his opponents and throw them in a wheelbarrow and then take him out to the junkyard because he was the Junkyard Dog. He was a heel. And then, as time went on and turned a baby face and then brought these damn Freebirds in, the Dog was a man of the audience. He was a man of the people. By God, black, red, brown, green, yellow. Dog, everyone loved Dog. He was an extremely unique, just he was one of a kind. And in that area, Dog was beloved. You did not besmirch the good goddamn name of the Junkyard Dog. And he was a badass to boot.
And the Superdome is obviously a major venue. Would that be like Bill Watts MSG, or what's a comparison for the Superdome relative to the WWF for some of our?
Oh, that would be WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about
I want to ask you though.
Yeah.
So this is one thing I love to bring up to Michael and you. 28,000 people in the Superdome.
It's not sold out. It's not even close.
Yeah. Sold out, dude.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. Now, but I don't want that to get lost on anybody.
28,000 is a lot of motherfuckers.
28,000 people.
A lot of motherfuckers.
A lot of motherfuckers, especially when you're running arenas that, hold 6,000 to, 10,000 max on a weekly basis. And then you go on one arena and do 28,000. Nothing to sneeze at.
I agree.
But I do kind of get a chuckle out of, we sold it out. And I was okay, well.
Maybe not.
You sold 28,000 tickets, which is extremely impressive.
But.
The SRO signs did not go out early on this one, Connie.
No. They still could have bought another seat.
Yes.
Yeah. You could have brought an extra friend. No big deal.
Right.
So let's talk about Ernie Ladd's influence. Not just. Ernie Ladd is probably the unsung hero at different points of this promotion. Sort of explain what all he was to Bill in the territory.
Well, Ernie was from Orange, Texas. Ernie went to Grambling. And Ernie had been a talent in the area for many years, established. And Ernie Ladd is another one of those guys that you look at, and I can't think of one territory where Ernie didn't go and just go right in and work on top and do whatever the hell he wanted to do, because he was just that good. But Ernie also had a great mind for the business, and being from the area, you know, Ernie was the Mid-South. Ernie knew the audience because he was the audience. So using Ernie's mind and to book and his connections and what have you. But there was, and someone will know this story better than I do, but there was a point where Ernie really didn't think that JYD was the guy.
Mm.
Now, Bill did. Bill was in love with JYD and wanted to protect JYD at all costs. In a house show one night, Ernie put him in the ring. I think it was Bob Root, but I don't know that. So, but it was a shooter, and they just stretched JYD 9 ways from Sunday, made JYD look like a fool.
Oh.
And Ernie called Bill bragging about how, yeah, Bill, I took your JYD out there, Bob Root, tied him up in knots. Nothing he could do about it. Made him look like a fool because he doesn't know what he was doing. I said, really? That's right, Bill. The Bob Root whooped his ass. Well, that's interesting, Ernie, because you know what? That'll never happen again. Well, Bill, I'm thinking. He goes, no. That'll never happen again. Because Bob Roop will never be in the ring with him again. And again, I don't know if it's Bob Roop. I'm using Bob Roop as a name.
Right.
He'll never be in the ring with him again because he's fired. Nah, Bill, I told him that. I said, oh, and Ernie, you're fired. For basically taking the top attraction in the company and going out and allowing him to be made a fool of.
Right.
So, boom, Ernie was out that quick because he wanted to prove a point that, you know, hey, Dog isn't this tough guy. Dog isn't this great wrestler and all this stuff. But Dog drew. Dog was badass.
Is this one of those deals where, hey, you're fired, and then they come back a week later?
Oh, goddamn, Bill. Ernie came back as many times as I came back. So, you know, different. It's, in that regard, it's a wrestling business, and Ernie and Bill had a bond that I think will forever. And that's where I remember going in whatever it was, 84 or something like that, sitting there in Bill's office in Bixby, Oklahoma, and they were booking. And Bill Watts, Ernie Ladd, myself, I don't even think JR was in the room. He may have been. Might have been Scott Munns in there. And Ernie goes off on this tangent. Bill, I'm telling you, you got to look at what McMahon is doing up there. The man is a genius. He's got out there, he got Volkov, he got Nikolai Volkov, and they got the Iron Sheik. Bill, the man is a genius. They're real, Bill. They're real. You got yourself a real Russian in Nikolai Volkov. You got yourself a real Iranian in the Iron Sheik. The man is a genius. He fired my ass. The man is a genius. And I start laughing. Because through all this shit, we're already talking about why Vince is a genius because of how he books his guys. In the middle of it, he says, he fired my ass.
Which is hilarious.
The man is a genius.
Yeah.
And I just started laughing because I said, well, yeah, okay. I can see the genius in that. Like, okay. When I got fired the first time from Vince, that he threw to me, basically. Bruce, the immortal words of Ernie Ladd. The man's a genius. My ass is fired. Yeah.
He used your own shit on you.
Yeah. That's all right. I appreciate that.
I have jokes, but I think we should just save them for another time. You know what? You weren't there in WCW when all the controversy happened with Bill. What been a lot written about him. He did an interview with Wade Keller that certainly did him no favors. That, you know, every now and again we say on the show, boy, that didn't age well. But he said some shit that just shouldn't have been said ever. So we're not defending that, but I am trying to, because Bill has always been, I don't know, it seems like a complicated man. You know, we're both friendly with JR, who thinks a lot of Bill Watts and thought he was all business, and, you know, he learned a lot from Bill, et cetera, et cetera. And then you hear, well, his top star was JYD. And you also hear that, you know, one of his right-hand guys and one of his bookers was Ernie Ladd. But then you read this stuff, or you hear this stuff secondhand, and you think, how's that the same guy? How do you reconcile all of that?
Well, I think that, again, a lot of times you're a product of your environment, and you have to go back to living in the 50s and 60s where Bill lived and how Bill was brought up in this business. This country was a different country. And while it may not excuse things, it explains things. And for those who haven't lived it, it's hard. It's hard for them to understand and realize, well, how could you ever think that? I said, well, hey, man, on the news, everything around you is this way. We've come so far and still have so far to go in this country as far as just treating everybody the same.
Right.
You know, no different than how, you know, I've talked about it on this show, just looking at homosexuals. And I was a homophobe until my best friend was a homosexual who I loved to death. And it's like, wait a minute.
Just wasn't part of your experience before.
Just wasn't, no, because I was ignorant.
Yeah.
And I think it's silly now when other people have the uneducated views. And I try to put on the hat that I wore at one time and say, all right, they just need to educate. They need to get outside of their comfort zone and realize that everybody puts on their pants the same way. Everybody farts. And just people are people, and let people be people. I think that Bill, in the environment in which he was raised, in which he did business, first of all, Bill came from a perspective of a bully.
Right.
Bill bullied his way into everything.
And you saw that firsthand.
100%.
Okay.
Oh God, 100%. And it was,
can you give us an example of that? Can you give me an example of him sort of, because we've all heard that as wrestling fans, but I think a lot of us assume it's because A, he was the boss, and B, he was such a big individual, but you saw actual situations. Can you share one?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen Bill take guys and put them against the wall and get in their face. He's done it to me. Put me against the wall and get in my face with his finger in my face and berate me until he was beat red and tell me what a horrible piece of shit I was and I would never amount to anything. And, you know, you're a stupid fucking kid. And it's just demoralizing in a lot of respects. But I watched him do it to talent. I watched him do it to people in restaurants. Bill was just came from a bully perspective.
When you say restaurants, you mean he would like bully a server?
Yeah. Or yes. Rude to the waitress, talk down to them. You know, came in my house, kicked off his shoes and put his feet on my kitchen table. Now, me as a guy,
you don't care.
And when there's 3 guys sitting there working, writing TV and booking, I didn't give a shit.
No.
When my wife came home, she goes like, hey, that's my kitchen table. Get your filthy feet off my kitchen table. He did, but then he had comments about it after she left the room. Like, who the hell she thinks she is? I said,
so that happened in the WWF, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, she's my wife that lives here, that this is our table where we eat, you know, and then I've got to defend her. And it's just, he could be very rude and very demeaning.
Oh man. So one of these times, as you sort of skipped right to it, the whole talent trade happens in Memphis. Bill Dundee comes in. Who had the book prior to Bill coming in? Would that have been Ernie Ladd?
I think it was Ernie. Yes, it was Ernie.
So business was down, and there was I've heard over the years that it's good for a booker to switch out. Like it can't just be the same guy forever and ever. Amen. So I think like in Memphis, they would do 6 months with Lawler running creative, 6 months with Jarrett running creative, and then switch. And you could usually tell if you were a fan back then, the more over the top, fantastic gimmicks or ideas, that was usually when Lawler was handling it. The more down and dirty traditional, that was probably when it was Jarrett. Do you buy into that, creatively you got to have a break?
I think you need new when you're creative. And I think that there comes a point where, you need to churn and you need to have new.
So let's talk about when Dundee came in. You very quickly parroted what I've heard a lot of people say. He hot-shotted the territory. And I think a lot of times fans online, like myself, will sometimes try to understand the language of professional wrestling, but give your explanation of what quote-unquote hot-shotting is.
Well, he came in and basically... First thing he did, a lot of gimmick matches, and
which was very Memphis of him, right? That's what they did in Memphis.
Yes, it was. It was a completely different philosophy than how the company had been run up until that point, where you built to a gimmick match. This was like, a guy falls out of the ring. Got to put him in a cage next week. But I also think that Dundee's booking was very creative. I thought that Dundee did a hell of a job as a booker because Dundee had things laid out. Dundee did plan in advance, and I thought he had some really good ideas. I just think that he did them way too fast to prove a point, to get, let's get in there, let's get this off its ass. Just by the talent he brought in, the younger talent he brought in, the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight, the Terry Taylors, that it gave a new paint of coat to the company. And people were now, who's this new guy? Who's this? Who's that? And I always point to the way that the Rock and Roll Express came in and got over, which was absolutely genius, and it was easy to do. We tried to recreate it with the Rockers early on. I would just try to tell Vince, man, let them be tag team specialists. That's what they are. Tag team. Together, they can't be beat. Individually, they can. But together, they can't be beat. And that's how the Rock and Roll were brought in.
Right.
Is, by God, these guys together, they're not the biggest guys in the world, but as a tag team, there's nobody better. And they came in and they beat Volkov and Khrushchev, Barry Darsow, on television. And it was like, what? What on paper looks like a match that they should be squished like bugs.
Right.
They did tag team. They in and out, double team, in and out, double team. To get them over by beating this huge, unstoppable team, like, holy cow, they're great. Then you bring in another team that's a heel team that are also tag team specialists, but they're heels. And you bring them in to work with, and that was the Midnight Express. And that had never been done. And it was 4 or 5 guys that got along perfectly and could tear the house down every single night. So that was different. You had Duggan, you had DiBiase and Kamala, but just, different talent that wasn't always the norm. Yes, some of it was, but Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA, it was Magnum TA being there to be groomed, and putting TA in a situation is Wrestling 2 being TA's mentor.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to find out, when you said earlier about Dundee, you were, oh, and then he hot shot at the territory. It was almost a negative thing. Like he did too much. He ultimately helped kill the territory of the promotion. You didn't say that, but that was certainly insinuated, and it's been said many, many times. But then just now you're sort of rattling off all the good things that he did. In hindsight, what should have been done differently in your opinion?
I think that at some point he should have leveled it off a little bit.
So he just did too much.
I think
of the
come
good
in
stuff,
and pop it and then level it off.
And you think
slow it down.
Just sort of carry me through your rationale there. The idea being, if you do all of these crazy, fantastic things every week, eventually you run out of shit to do.
Yes.
So the way to do that is to very, very rarely do it and just stretch it out.
Yes. But I think that the way that Bill brought in, look, he had an entire new roster that he had to get over quick.
Well, here's what I was going with that. It feels like a lot of times, quote unquote, old timers who talk about modern wrestling, they say, oh, they're doing too much. This guy or that guy's doing too much, what have you. And it feels like this is sort of the same thing, except maybe the booking side of things, right? Where you got to get less is more. Should the goal of everybody, working on a program be to, hey, we got to make sure this week's show was better than last week's show? Or do you think that leans into the hot shotting?
I think it can lean into the hot shotting. And again, you look at this as a perfect example because it got it so high, but there was nowhere to go after that height. And instead of going down just a little bit, leveling off, and then where you can have your peaks and valleys, it went in the valley and didn't come out.
So Ernie Ladd and Paul Orndorff are going to main event the Superdome show after JYD and Doot Doot in a lights out match where Ladd wins in front of 18,000 people. I mean, this is a huge crowd. What was the difference, would you say, at the time between a Jim Crockett Promotions, which, is not yet on TBS, Mid-South, and the World Wrestling Federation here in, what is this, 81?
Yeah. Again, you're looking at, I don't even know that Mid-South, that Jim Crockett was anything more than just a little regional promotion. Same thing as Mid-South. And New York was just New York. No one had made any big national moves. The closest thing to a national company that you had was Atlanta because they had TBS at 6:05 on Saturday night.
November of 81, it's a main event with JYD and Mike George against Paul Orndorff and Bob Orton Jr. This is a 46-minute match with JYD. It's a different era, is it not?
Yeah, these guys worked. You only had 4 or 5 matches on a card.
You mentioned Ted DiBiase a little earlier. What was it about Ted that made him work so well against JYD and Duggan?
Man, Teddy just had chemistry with those two guys. And Ted could work with a broom and make that broom look like $1 million. Ted was smooth, second generation, but also Ted had credibility in that area. Teddy came in and kind of was that stalwart that had been around for a long time. They knew him. Teddy had been babyface. He'd been heel, been babyface, heel, gone back and forth. The best thing that ever happened to Ted's career was when he finally left in 87. To go do $1 Million Man, because I think Ted had kind of gotten into a rut in Mid-South. Always top guy, but didn't always draw the best out of all the top guys.
Let's talk about somebody else who didn't really draw as well as maybe we would have thought. Butch Reed, boy, he was over in Florida, as we've well established here on the program. But he drew the worst house for a Superdome show in November of 83, just 8,000 people there. What didn't click about Butch and JYD together?
Man, I don't know. Because Butch was over in Florida.
Well, everybody knows that.
Yeah. And this was in the time that he was dabbling in Apple computers and all, and trying to put that all together. But Butch was,
Just say it.
I think Butch was too refined. You know what I mean? Butch was.
It needed to be more of a brawler, more of a street fight.
He needed to be more real.
Okay.
Butch dressed very well. And as I say that, I was like, well, shit, JYD dressed really well. But Butch just didn't connect with the audience. And you would have thought he would, because he was a stud and a half.
He needed more yin and yang, you're saying,
yes.
Maybe?
Yeah.
For it to work with JYD. Like, he couldn't be more of the same. It had to be different.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Stagger Lee. Explain who Stagger Lee was and why he was so important to Mid-South. Is
it me or is it Stagger Lee? Well, old Stagger was, I just had his picture in here. Where the hell was it? JYD lost a match in which he would have to leave Mid-South Wrestling. And in the middle of all that, this gentleman came out by the name of Stagger Lee, who was going to avenge what they did to his good friend, the Junkyard Dog. So it was Stagger Lee, and people thought that Stagger Lee was JYD.
Why would they think that?
Well, same body type, and kind of looked the same a little bit. But I saw Stagger Lee do a public workout, and JYD was there.
Oh, well then that kills. That's the end of that.
Yeah, that's the end of that. But, people, it was the whole thing, and Cornette, the Midnight Express, and Bill Watts, and this was at the height of the heat of Cornette and Midnight, and they went around with the last Stampede, which was Cowboy Bill Watts coming out of retirement to team with Stagger Lee to face the Midnight Express. And the stipulations of the match were, if Midnight Express lost, then Jim Cornette would have to wear one of his mommy's dresses. And that was the stipulation. Yep. Sure was.
Mommy's dresses.
Yeah. Because, see, his promos were, Cornette, you're a sissy. You're a little sissy. And I'm going to make you wear one of your mommy's dresses. If you beat Stagger Lee, and Stagger Lee unmasked, and it is JYD, then by God, Stagger Lee and JYD are banned for life.
They tried the Butch JYD thing again in July of '84. They draw 20,800 fans. This time it's for can't believe this is real, ghetto street fight.
We had a lot of those.
Don't think you can call it these days. Terry Taylor debuts here. I assume when Terry Taylor comes in, Bill Watts looks around and says, guys, we're ready to go national now. Terry Taylor's here.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
What can you tell us about Terry Taylor? We haven't spent any time talking about him.
Terry, it's funny. I saw Terry the other day. We were laughing about how many times he was Rookie of the Year, how many times my brother was Rookie of the Year. And they were all the same years, because every territory they went to, they became Rookie of the Year. They had that nice, young, fresh look and what have you. But Terry came in, good looking guy, different kind of baby face. The Mid-South had always been home to rugged baby faces, from Bill Watts to JYD to, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And now here comes this fresh faced, good looking guy that the girls are going crazy over. It was a different way. And that was one of the guys that Bill Dundee brought in that was different than what had been in the past.
it starts to feel like the wheels are coming off when all of a sudden JYD leaves with no notice. What do you remember about this and what it did to the territory, I guess?
Man, damn near killed it. I had a show in Beaumont the Sunday. I think the dog left on a Friday or a Saturday, and I had a show in Beaumont, Ghetto Street Fight with Butch Reed. And I remember going, shit, we had a good house. And I'm like, what do we do? And I jokingly said, how about if we just play JYD's music and we leave? All of us. Just get the fuck out of town and never come back. Because I didn't, frankly.
You felt like that was the end of the promotion?
I thought we were going to be dead there anyway. So.
But if we don't have JYD, it's really pointless.
Well, at that point, because I even forget what the hell we did for a substitution, but it was horrible. And then Bill started bringing in all these guys to replace JYD that the audience didn't want.
Yeah.
It was brought in George Wells, came out to the Sugar Hill Gang. Well, MASTERG with the double E. You see, I go by the unmistakable name of the man they call him Master G.
Oh, what's going on?
My name is known all over the world by all the foxy ladies and the pretty girls.
So help me understand.
I'll be the baddest brother that ever could be. Well,
another example of this, maybe not the best one, but sort of like on the heels of Hulk Hogan leaving the WWF. Hey, maybe we'll try Lex Luger. You can't make him the American hero that Hulk Hogan was. There was only one Hulk Hogan, and try as you might, fans, they'd like to see Hulk Hogan or something else, not another version of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and these were just bad. And when George Wells didn't work out, he brought in the Snowman, who was absolutely horrible. And then they brought in Brickhouse Brown. And then they brought in Savannah Jack. And it was there was a feeling, of oh my God, we've got this big void. When we really didn't have a void, we had Duggan, and Duggan was red hot.
Well, but I guess my question is, do you think Bill was trying to lean too much on, we need another super black babyface?
Yes, he was.
Like you need
we just needed a babyface.
Right. But he didn't want just a babyface. He felt like he needed a black athlete. He needed someone to sell tickets to black fans.
But see, that's like saying, okay, JYD only sold the black fans. JYD didn't. JYD appealed to everyone.
I'm not arguing that, but the idea.
So did Duggan. Duggan appealed to everyone.
Not arguing. I'm just trying to get context because you just rapped a guy's theme song, and I don't think you were rapping about Jim Duggan's theme song. So it feels like maybe Bill thought, well, part of the formula that you can't get wrong here, it's got to be a black dude.
I think that's what Bill thought. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I rapped the songs. That was a great song.
Sure. That's a word. I've heard that word before.
That was awesome.
Okay.
Are you saying that Rapper's Delight is not one of the greatest songs of all time?
I just don't know that you should do rap.
I'm a good rapper.
Okay.
50 Shades of Grey, beat that booty like Hogan.
Ric Flair and Kerry Von Erich headlined a Superdome show in August of '84. Magnum TA Star is on the rise. Of course, Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express are putting the woods on fire. And it's crazy to say, at this point, Bill Watts in 1985 plans on expanding nationally, and he's going to get a show on TBS. You were not yet with the WWF, but I'm sure that Vince couldn't have been all too happy with that. What do you remember about Watts getting on TBS?
Oh, I think that, Bill was looking at any weakness there that he could find in any opportunity. And I think that Turner was looking at having some kind of wrestling on versus that WWF stuff. So it was a great opportunity for Bill, but an expensive one too. And they were great shows. They really were.
It's interesting to think about, what could have been. Do you think if Watts would have done the TBS deal a few years earlier, it would have made a difference? By 85, Vince had too much of a lead on everybody. What do you think?
Possibly, but again, yeah, that's hindsight. I think that Bill would have had a better chance. Yes.
Let's talk about Ted DiBiase. He leaves in a loser leaves steel cage match to Jim Duggan on March 30th, 1985. That's the day before WrestleMania. The next Superdome show is June of 85, where the Snowman is accompanied by Muhammad Ali, just 3 months off WrestleMania, to face off against Jake Roberts. Any good stories about Jake and Bruce, or Jake and Ali, Bruce?
No, that was a New Orleans story, and Jake and Ali. I don't know that Ali knew what exactly to make out of Jake, and this was also during the time of Ali being a little punchy.
Okay,
WrestleMania 85, Ali, really was starting to get punchy, and you could see it, and people were asking questions going, holy shit, man, what's going on here? So he was a little bit out of it. Boudini Brown, Ali's manager, kind of ran things at that point. And from everything I remember, man, it was Ali was easy. He was easy and fun to work with.
let's talk a little bit about Flair and Terry Taylor. They go 40 minutes, pretty famous story that Terry Taylor has told a few times. And Jim Duggan is going to go to a double disqualification with Kamala. This is probably peak Terry Taylor here, is it not? Mid-South wrestling Flair and a big show like this. As far as his in-ring career, do you think that's probably the top of the mountain for him?
Yeah, that's pretty much where Terry peaked, my opinion.
2 months later, Flair's going to go 44 minutes and beat Butch Reed on the same show, where Kamala and Ray Candy are going to beat Bill Watts and Jim Duggan in a loser leaves town match. Do you think that the gimmick matches in that era, I mean, does a loser leaves town, does that always work? Is it a proven draw, or did it started? I mean, eventually it feels like it has to come back with diminishing returns, right?
Yeah, it sucks. Then we had to put the loser leaves town for 90 days or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
I'm actually pulling up one right now from in September 27th, 1985 in Houston. Duggan versus Kamala, loser leave town. And no stipulation for how long, but it's crazy just how we would do. And there was one match, and this was in, I believe, 85, 86. We had this match in Houston. A cage match. Both men dressed in tuxedos.
Oh yeah, I know this one.
Coal miner's glove on a pole.
Yeah.
Loser leave town. Loser painted yellow. Might have been more cage. Both men in a tuxedo. Texas death match. Coal miner's glove on a pole.
Every descriptor you could put on a match, this one had.
Yeah. And we had been joking about that because every fucking 2 weeks there were gimmick matches.
Right.
Gotta have sizzle. Need sizzle.
Wait, now you're saying that in JR's voice. Is that?
Yeah, because that was JR at that time, saying we need gimmicks on these matches.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to get hot about it.
Well, it became slack night, as Paul Bosch used to say, because back in the 50s and 60s, women only wore dresses, and they would have promotions. Tonight is slack night. If women wear slacks, then they get in free, or they get in for $1. Shit like that. Promotions, gimmicks. So every time that Paul would see, oh my God, another cage match, or oh my God, another coal miner's glove match, oh my God, a painted yellow match, is why don't we just put slack night out every night? So, shizzle.
Slack night. So 86, it feels like it's a Hail Mary effort. Bill's going to rename the company. As we know, it's only been Mid-South for a handful of years, but now it's going to be renamed Universal Wrestling Federation, and it's going to continue to compete against Jim Crockett and Vince McMahon. What did you think of the switch here? We're not the World Wrestling Federation. We're the Universal Wrestling Federation.
Universe is bigger than the world.
I mean, I saw a proton pack in wrestling this week. So, I mean, maybe aliens are next. I don't know. Chat me up. What'd you think of the UWF concept?
I thought it was silly.
Yeah.
Because it was presented in that way that, the universe is bigger than the world. So we're the universal. We'll be bigger than them. We'll be better than them because we're universal. And it just did not work, man.
Was it obvious to you in 86 that this thing ain't going to last?
It was getting there. Yes, it really was. But at the same time, Terry Taylor had been brought in as booker for half a minute. I think he lasted maybe 3 weeks before he got fired. And
well, let's talk through that. Do you think he didn't want to be in that spot? Did he not think he was done with the in-ring? Did he think it would be different than it was? Was it hard working with Bill, or did he just suck?
No, he just sucked. He had no people skills.
Okay.
He had no people skills, and Terry wanted to be in that position big time. But Terry also wanted to perform, and Terry also just didn't have good people skills at that time. So it was little things like, Murdoch quitting and because he hated Terry, and guys just, Bill Eadie giving his notice, and nobody wanted to work with him. It was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this, not going through this one with you, Bill. And then he was let go, and Ken Mantell was brought in. And then, the rest, as they say, is history. But I enjoyed working with Mantell. I thought that Kenny was creative, had a good way about him as far as laying things out. But as I go through the programs here, thumbing through them of 1986, and see like Korchenko and Eddie Gilbert and the Sheep Herders and Buzz Sawyer, and wow, it was ugly. It was ugly.
In 86, you've got Sting, the Ultimate Warrior, the Fantastics, Steve Williams. Of course, we would even see Ray Traylor and Terry Gordy. It's an interesting little series of champions and what have you here in the UWF, but eventually the downturn of the economy, I think, is what's really blamed on Watts' territory starting to go belly up. He was trying a syndicated network. He's losing stars left and right to both the WWF and Jim Crockett Promotions. And ultimately, the UWF was sold to Jim Crockett on April 9th, 1987. And then 2 days later, they had a super blast at the Superdome show. One more time. It's a Superdome show. And it drew 3,000 people. You've talked a little bit before about this sale. from the UWF and Bill Watts selling his territory to Jim Crockett. Catch us up about when you first heard that, hey, things are bad and money's down and towns are upside down. You were there for some of that, and I think you were even in proximity when the sale happened. Just take us through the end of Bill Watts' run here.
Well, first I have to dispel the rumor of the oil crash and that's why the business went down. There was an oil crash. Businesses were going down all over the place. However, I think that the business decisions that were made to go national are what took the company down. Instead of taking care of our home base, where you have control over things and the audience knows you. You've spent all this time building up an audience, and now you're going to go and take it to Chicago or LA or San Francisco, Minneapolis, New York, because you wanted to be like Vince.
Yeah.
That's the wrong reason to do business. And it's the wrong way to do it because they weren't established. But they would spin the ratings, the Arbitron ratings of syndicated television and say, well, look, on this channel, we're number one. Okay, on that channel at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday morning,
yeah,
you're number one.
Yeah.
Because whatever. They would spin everything to make it positive, which everybody does. I get that. But you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And the expansion going and spending all the money on trans and getting talent across the country in new buildings, unfamiliar buildings, where your TV isn't as strong as what it used to be. Now you got 200 people in Irvine, California, wherever the hell you're running. You got 300 people in Chicago. You're going up into Sonoma Valley, and you're drawing 180 people and shit like that. And you're running them. You're running these at this huge loss, and it was just taking so much money out of the company. Well, we're going to go to New York.
Right.
That's where we're going to make the money. Died everywhere they went. And in that process, they lost focus on their base. Because as we're going to promote to the world, we're going to promote out here. In the past, the reason that Vince couldn't break in to the Mid-South area, Mid-South was one of the very few areas that Vince didn't come in and just take hold of, was because we concentrated on what we were doing in our area. And we kept him out. We fought him. Well, now we're going to fight him on his turf.
Yep.
And he's like, this isn't a fight. He didn't even care. He did nothing to combat it. And we lost what we had back at home. So to me, it wasn't the oil crash. It was bad business decisions that ran it into the ground and made it worth nothing. The sale was, something that, Jim would sit in his office, and it was kind of an open office, and you could hear Jim talking to different people. Like, heard him talking to Vince and heard him talking to Crockett and different people. Yeah, well, we got this, our ratings are number one, and we got this and Arbitron and that and here, and very arrogant, very
Jim was
selling, man.
Yeah, Jim was selling from he didn't want to look weak, right? I mean,
right.
You don't want to try to say, oh boy, everything sucks. Could you give us some money? I mean, that's not going to work. So instead, he probably tried to toot the horn a little bit. Right.
And for those that didn't know Jim, if you know Jim, you know where Jim's coming from. But to people like Vince and like that, it's like, who the fuck is this fucking arrogant motherfucker? His numbers aren't shit.
Right.
To Crockett, I think that Jim took a different spin in the syndicated TV and what that had. to make that deal work. So, again, kudos to him for being able to do it. I don't know, depending upon who you believe, I don't know if Watts ever got all of his money or if Crockett ever got everything he was supposed to get. Who the hell knows? Only those two guys know that.
It was a bad deal.
Huh?
It was a bad deal.
Yeah, it was. And it was, you could have then focused on the territory. You know what I mean?
Right.
You could have had your Mid-South territory. You could have had your Mid-Atlantic territory in Atlanta and run those as separate territories. Instead, everybody's ego, as it always does, always happens, they bring it all in because they want one boss and one thing to be in control.
So what were your favorite things or favorite memories of working with Mid-South?
I think some of the friendships that I made there, from Duggan, DiBiase, Cornette, Jim Ross. If it wasn't for Jim Ross sticking up for me and Jim Ross suggesting me to do promos and different things, who knows where I'd be today. So Jim gave me a lot of opportunities, and Jim was the guy that pushed for me, and I'll never forget that. And I appreciate that every single day, because you have to wonder, if I didn't do all that shit, would I have gotten to do the things I got to do after that? So those things, man, that I really am so grateful for. But out of that, riding in cars for a long period of time with guys, having Jim Duggan, taking care of Jim Duggan's car when he went on his first Japan trip, and having his hubcap stolen at my condo, those kind of bonds that are just funny that we still talk about to this day. And by the way, wishing Jim a speedy recovery, man. Had some cancer surgery here this past week, and I love that man and his wife, Deborah. They're wonderful people, so send out a prayer to them. But it was fun. It was an opportunity as a young kid. Think about it, man. That was the time, like I was from 19 to 24, that I got to sit under the learning tree, to sit under Ernie Ladd's learning tree, sit with Ken Mantell. It's funny, I would listen to Dundee. I didn't work a lot with Dundee one-on-one, but I loved to watch Bill work and learn different things from him. And so the learning, that was my college education in so many ways. So I wouldn't change any of it. I wish that I had been more mature in some of my dealings with Bill Watts. I don't hate Bill Watts by any stretch of the imagination. I think Bill is a wrestling savant. I just think that we are different people, and it is what it is.
When you said you wish you had been more mature, can you give us an example of where something you wish you had to do over again?
Oh, sure. I mean, walking out on a show because Boyd Pierce was there to ring announce the main event. I was like, wait a minute, I'm the ring announcer. I should ring announce the main event. Stupid little ego things that mean nothing in the grand scope of things. And it was Boyd Pierce. It was the guy that gave me the microphone for the first time as a kid. And I'm mad that he, as their television host, is going to introduce the main event. Who cares? I walked out because of that. Stupid.
What are your, is that your least favorite memory, or are there others that, we talked about your favorite memories. Are there least favorite memories?
I would probably say that. I'd probably say when I really started doing more from a national standpoint on the Mid-South shows, that in Houston, when Paul and Pete got, I'll say jealous, that we were shooting angles in Houston with me, and they felt that those angles should be shot with either Peter or Paul. So we would have to shoot double angles. We'd have to shoot them with Peter and Paul in Houston. Then they would shoot them with me in Tulsa or Dallas for the national show. So the angle would air in Houston as if it happened with Paul and Pete doing it, and it would air everywhere else with me doing it. Those were kind of sad times that I wish had never happened. I look back at the negotiations when we were going to go and have spot shows all over the place. And the big pitch to me was, Bruce, you've got Texas. Yet everything south of Interstate 10 in Texas, all virgin territory for us. So every town that I ran was going to be a new town, which is a nice deal. We had television everywhere. And I met with Bill at the Amfac Hotel at DFW Airport. And Scott Munns was there. Jack Curtis was there. Ronnie West was there. The pitch was, hey, when you run your towns, and if it's an office town, you get 5% of the net. If it's a spot show, you get 10% of the net. And I said, well, since all of my territory basically is virgin territory, I said, everything I run is going to be a spot show. So, yeah. Unless it's a office town. I said, well, what constitutes an office town? They said, well, that's a town that's run on a regular basis. I would ask, what's a regular basis? Well, like once a month, twice a month. So if I run a show in a town every 5 weeks, then that's a spot show, and I get 10%. I said, well, if you run it every 5 weeks, then that's a regular town, then it becomes an office town. I said, so if I go out and I build up these towns, and I'm getting 10% as I build them up, and I build them up to a place that now we can run on a regular basis, you're going to take 5 points away from me. Well, yeah. I said, well, what's my incentive to go out and build towns? I'll just run, other towns and new towns all the time so I get 10 points. I said, but you should want to build those up for the office. I said, I want to build them up for my bank account.
Right.
And and Bill, oh my God, he got so red in the face because he couldn't see that I didn't understand that I should be wanting to work harder to give him more money and take more money away from me.
So what all did you do with the company? I mean, you sort of laid out the whole town scenario there, and you did ring announcing. Any other duties that you had here with Mid-South?
Yeah, I mean, from obviously in Houston, which Bill owned part of, I ran all of Houston, did everything there. But also for Mid-South, we did the merchandising. So we did all of their concession sales and their mail order merchandising. I handled all of that out of the Houston office. Then I would go and do TV, and I would do the interviews for all of the individual markets and also ring announce. And I would help them write TV. I would sit in with them when they wrote TV on TV days and go over what we were doing on the television shows. During the week, sometimes when I would go to Tulsa, would sit in on booking meetings and what have you. So it kind of ran the gambit of things. I was going to, at one point before the sale, I was tinkering with moving to Dallas and being in the office there in Dallas and Las Colinas. And I really don't even know what the hell I would have been doing then, other than working with Jim Ross and some different things. But I think the most fun I had was probably working later on with Ken Mantell, Eddie Gilbert, and a lot of the bookers and guys that came through, and the friends that I made.
One last one, then we'll get to some fan questions and we'll get out of here. What, if any, lasting legacy do you think Mid-South has left on wrestling?
Wow. Well, I think if you look at guys like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, JYD, I'll put DiBiase in that category too. Some of the greats, Magnum TA, that was really groomed there till he went to the Carolinas and was going to become the man. I think that's what the audience will remember, those big stars. good episodic television.
Great friend of the show, Lenny Bakken, wants to know, how was Bruce's pay structured in Mid-South? Was it per event? Did he have incentives? Was it an increase from Houston?
Wow. In a lot of ways, I made more money for doing just like the announcing gigs and interview gigs and everything in Mid-South in 2 or 3 days that I did for the week in Houston sometimes. So I was very fairly compensated. I can't complain one iota about the compensation from Bill Watts. Even when I was out with mononucleosis for 10 weeks, Bill Watts paid me where Houston didn't.
Wow. So all that rap about everybody getting a pay cut. That's another perspective. Ringside Rant.
Yeah. Bill took care of me. And I give that credit again. That goes to Jim Ross, who called me every day to check on me.
Look at you. Ringside Rant wants to know, do you think in the end Mid-South wound up being a feeder system for the WWF and the NWA?
Boy, I tell you, it was a place where the up and comers were, and they were making stars. So yes, I do think that was probably one of the last vantage points of some big stars where they could come from.
Interesting to ask you this question. Tony Flowers wants to know, Magnum TA is touted by most as someone who would have been the guy if not for the accident. Was this opinion universally shared, or did he have his detractors back then? And what were your feelings on his future?
Well, Terry Allen is a human being, is one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. So I don't know of anybody that was, I can't say, oh my God, yeah, no, Terry was not liked. That's just not the case. I think Terry was universally liked, universally respected, and was viewed as the future in so many ways because he had the look, he had the talent. Terry had it all. And the unfortunate accident, I think, did derail that. And I do think that Terry would have been a hell of a showpiece and a hell of a top guy for somebody.
Here's one from Doughboy. Is there anyone from Mid-South that Bruce thought could have made an impact on a national or global scale, but just never did?
Well, I always, from a back of house, Joel Watts, I wish that Joel had stuck around longer in WWE because I thought Joel was borderline genius at the time and very, very good at what he did in the production, the videos, and just his view of the business was different. And he could have contributed big time. As far as in front of the camera, I think that pretty much they got everybody that was worth anything.
Adam wants to know, who's someone that we as fans barely hear of in Mid-South, but had a real effect on Bruce at the time?
I would probably say Ken Mantell, Ernie Ladd to a point, but Ken Mantell more than anybody, and Eddie Gilbert.
What about Instagram wrestling historian wants to know, what do you think Bill Watts' legacy is?
I think Bill will go down as the Mid-South guy. Unfortunately, I think the Bill's legacy will also be scarred with some of the comments that he's made through the years.
What about Q Hicks here? He says, how well did you and Cornette get along back then?
Cornette and I got along great back then.
Joseph wants to know, do you think a Butch Reed versus Terry Taylor program could have saved Mid-South at the end? Because we all know that Butch was over in Florida.
Absolutely. But, at that time, Butch was working on the COVID cure because he was just that far ahead of things.
Michael wants to know, what are your memories of working as a ring announcer for the first Crockett Cup?
That I didn't get a Crockett Cup shirt.
Damn it.
The polo shirts. Yeah. Everybody got one but me. Me and Joe Watts. Neither one of us got one. That's my memory right there. That's my memory. but it was a lot of fun. I will say that, man. It was a hell of a weekend there at the Hyatt Regency at the Superdome, and it was a lot of fun seeing a lot of old friends and meeting a lot of the legends that came in.
When Arn talks about working that territory, he talks about how brutal the schedule was because it was a ton of long drives. It was notorious for being the place where you drove the most, and usually not highway miles, but like backwood 2-lane roads type situation. Was that your experience?
Absolutely. And I didn't have to do it every week, but it was the travel was brutal.
Here's one from Michael. He wants to know, Mid-South produced a lot of talent that spent time in the WWE. Who'd be your top 5 talent to never make it in the WWE? Can you give me one?
Well, I think Magnum immediately comes to mind.
Yeah.
I'll cheat and I'll look in my book here. Dick Slater never really made it in WWE, and Dick was a big star there. Dr. Death is probably, I think Dr. Death would be at the top of that list more so than anybody.
Purple Pillow Haver says, what the fuck
You're
was
a
up
Purple
with
Pillow Haver?
What the fuck is up with those belts? Did you like the Mid-South belts?
Hated it. The big giant one, the North American.
You hated that one?
I hated that. It's too fucking big. Who could wear it? The first guy to have it was Brad Armstrong or Ernie. Took up Brad's whole body. It's terrible. Very cumbersome. Yeah, it was the shits.
So what about Jonathan? He says, is it true a lot of the wrestlers lived around Alexandria, Louisiana? I've always heard Cornette talk about Alexandria being the home base for a lot of the guys because it was seemingly the center of the state.
Exactly. Wherever you went, it was the center of the territory, from Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma. I'd say 90% of the boys lived in Alex.
Black Wrist wants to know, does Bruce have any stories about Ox Baker or Killer Brooks?
Not really. Killer Brooks, man, was one really, really fine gentleman. And he was one of those guys that you have a picture in your mind before you meet him, what they're going to be like. And almost like, ooh, man, this is a scary guy. But Killer was super, super nice to me, man. It couldn't have been better to me from the times in Dallas, Mid-South, and even after he retired. And last time I saw him was when I was in TNA. Great guy. Ox, super guy too, but I just wasn't around him that much.
Gary wants to know, what was Boyd Pierce's actual role in Mid-South, and who came up with Dr. Death and Hacksaw where they wore football gear in the ring?
Boyd Pierce was just the ring announcer and the commentator. And his duties as a commentator basically consisted of, hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Mid-South Championship Wrestling. We got an exciting show for you tonight. And here's Bill. And then he wouldn't say anything to, thank you very much. Tune in. Tune in next week for more Mid-South Championship Wrestling.
What about
that was actually Boyd's viewpoint of what he did.
The football gear in a match? What'd you think?
Well, goddamn, they're football players. Put them in football gear. Sassafras. I don't know, but I'm going to give that one to Jim.
Ray LeDuc, last one. Who do you think defined Mid-South Wrestling? Is it JYD?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think JYD's biggest star to come out there. There are two people that define it. That's Bill Watts and Jim and Junkyard Dog.
Well, I think we've said it all. Is there anything we've missed about Mid-South that you want to throw in here?
I'm sure we missed a lot, but I thought we did a pretty damn good job. See, I like these where there's not a lot of preparation for you. We just bullshit.
Just freestyle.
Just freestyling, baby.
Well, next week, we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming. We're going to be talking about Cyber Sunday 2006. This is a change from Taboo Tuesday, and it's going to feature all three brand champions against each other. So So we got John Cena versus Booker T versus Big Show. Kevin Federline is going to debut in the build up to this show. We got DX versus Rated RKO with our old pal Eric Bischoff as the special guest referee. Umaga versus Kane. Lita versus Mickey James. And the Spirit Squad is going to take on Ric Flair. And the fans get to vote on Flair's tag team partner. Will it be Roddy Piper? Will it be Dusty Rhodes? Or will it be Sergeant Slaughter? A lot of fun stuff to talk about from 2006 next week here on the show. I'm looking forward to that one, man.
It's going to be funky like a monkey. And now that what were you dressing up as for Halloween? You going to be a pumpkin head?
I'm actually going to be, our favorite bartender here in town, Dre. He and I are going to be the Dudley Boys. I'm going to be Bubba. I don't know if you could have guessed that. Dre will be Devon. And Clint from Hershey is going to be Joel Gertner.
Interesting. Are you having a party at the mansion?
No, we're doing it at our favorite watering hole that's closed on Sunday, but open for me.
Well, that's special.
Yeah. So do a little get together, a little wrestling, if you will. And the rumor and innuendo is that Cassio and Silva are going to be like a fat rock and roll express.
Well,
So if we actually get Silva in tights, I'll be sure to send you a picture.
Oh, please. Please. And shave him.
Shave him?
Yeah, shave his whole body.
He's a hairless.
Oh.
I mean, and he's
shave him anyway.
Nah. I don't have that many blades,
Okay.
Well, boys and girls, that's going to do it. I think this was fun, man. We kicked it old school, got to talk about some Mid-South wrestling, and I'd like to convince you, take a picture or two from your old booking sheets there and post them to social, or slide them over to me and I'll put them on the show account. But you got some fun stuff right there that I'd like to at least give people a peek at.
Yeah, we'll see.
And we'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
You rock on. Be nice to people.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.